That is one of the rationales for me doing a covered strangle. Buy some more if it goes lower and gets cheaper from a valuation standpoint. But if it goes higher, then it might get overly expensive and I'd be good to sell the 100 shares that I have. It's perfect in that regard for value investors. I buy more if the stock is lower. I sell it if the stock is higher. Now, those aren't the only reasons why I do it. One of the reasons why I do it, in fact, the one that I did today,
Hello, Wealth Builders. You're listening to Wealth Building with Options. Here's your host, Dan Passarelli.
Hey, Wealth Building family, welcome to episode 27, Frickin Hulu. But before we jump in today, let's talk about how you can get the most out of the Wealth Building with Options community. Help grow the Wealth Building with Options community by subscribing to it in your favorite podcast app. And if you're already a listener, you can support the show with a paid subscription. When you do, you'll get a lot of great stuff. You'll get video extra podcasts, so you can get hands-on video training on things we talk about in the podcast. Subscriber-only posts where I'll drill down on a stock, event, or trading opportunity and share trade ideas. You'll also get my covered call and cash secured put trades that I'm making in my real brokerage account. You'll also get access to our monthly online Ask Me Anything webinar, and you'll get our unusual options activity alerts on options income trades and a whole lot more. And the best part is your paid subscription helps keep this show on the air, and that's good for all of us. So I would like to take a minute and thank our current subscribers. How about a big thank you for Jane, a big thank you for Ann T, and for Glenn K, and for Steve D, Sean K, and Nan Ron. Also, a big thank you for our yearly subscribers, Alex H, Bill H, VJ, Paul P, Myron, Mark, Spencer, John D, Douglas B, Ed B, Christopher L, and Deborah, and Eric G. To join this list of wealth building paid subscribers who go above and beyond, just go to wealthbuildingpodcast.com and choose your subscription level. Once again, that's wealthbuildingpodcast.com. You know what I hate? Sounding like an old man. And I don't think that's something that I often do. I mean, first of all, I'm not an old man, right? But I've come to learn as time has passed that whole statement is all relative. My son was talking to me about something the other day, and he was talking about some middle-aged person that he knows who is 35 years old. I told him 35 is not middle-aged. Like, that person's going to die young if that's middle of that person's age. I mean, I am 54, which I think is, okay, let's be fair. Maybe that's not middle-aged. Middle is the same as like the mean and median here, right? So I might be a little past middle-aged at this point, but 35 is not middle-age. Nobody thinks they're old. Nobody does. I remember when I was my son's age, I probably thought 54 was an old man too, but now that's a totally young person, like 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds, they're kind of getting up there in years, right? They're starting to get old. 54? Huh, that's nothing. But I was thinking about this recently because I was thinking about TV, shows, streaming services. For those of you who are real middle aged or a little past middle age, do you remember when there were just like 5 channels that you could watch? Like 2, 5, 7, 9, 11. I guess it depends on what part of the country you grew up in. There's like 5 channels. Now there's, holy crap, there's a ton of them, right? And also the remote. Like I just sit on the couch at night. I got the remote in my one hand and probably one of my little dogs in the other hand. And, flip through the channels. It takes you like an hour to find something to watch. And then you fall asleep halfway through because it's bedtime because you spend so much time trying to find something to watch. But when I was a kid, I was the remote. You didn't have the remote that you held in your hand. It was, Danny, go put on channel 5. And I'd have to get up off the couch and turn the dial to channel 5. But anyway, now I'm totally sounding like an old man. This is ridiculous. All right. Oh, gosh. All right. Anyway, so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I was watching Hulu recently, frickin' Hulu, and we pay for that subscription, which we do mainly because you can watch like the regular, what you used to call channels, like the local channels. And even though we pay to watch it, there's still freaking ads on there. And it's not just Hulu. This is Amazon and like this is a whole bunch of it's most of the ones that you pay for, there are freaking ads on there. So like the viewers pay the streaming services to watch what is on, but then they get paid also by advertisers so that the viewers can watch it. They're double dipping, which, hey man, I don't begrudge a man for a profit. Go for it, right? I don't have to watch it. I can cancel my subscription anytime. They get to double dip, and hey man, in a way, good for them. I think that's brilliant. I mean, what business doesn't want to do that? I mean, I don't really get to do that, but either way. But yeah, it's brilliant. And this whole thing kind of reminds me of one way that we, as wealth builders who use options, are actually able to double dip a little bit. And that is by using covered strangles and covered straddles. These can be super excellent strategies, very underrated, very underused. And don't get me wrong, like I don't use them every day. I actually legged into one today. Even though I recorded this previously, I did leg into one of them on the day I recorded this. But I don't use them every day. But when I do, it's like the Dos Equis commercial. I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I drink Dos Equis. I don't always trade covered straddles or strangles, but when I do, man, I freaking love it because you do get to double dip. Now, when I talk about a double dip, like there's never a pure double dip, right? I mean, even with the Hulu thing where they're getting paid by the viewers and they're getting paid by the ads that the viewers view, that's not really a pure double dip either because, some people who are really crotchety old people might say, damn it, I paid for watching this. I don't need to see ads. I'm going to cancel my service. And then they don't get to watch anything. They just stare out the window. But there probably are some people who do that. So it's not really a pure double dip. I mean, they're not guaranteed to get paid on both sides of this thing. But with the best double dips, you usually get to collect on both sides, and it's great. And that is very much like what covered strangles and straddles can do for you. So let's jump in. What am I talking about when I'm talking about covered strangles and covered straddles? A covered strangle or a covered straddle They're basically the same thing. There's one little difference. I bet you can guess what it is. It's strike prices, but here's how it works. An investor owns shares of stock, and we're just going to go into like the base unit here, one lot, so 100 shares of stock. An investor owns 100 shares of stock and has a call sold against that stock, so like a covered call, and sells a cash secured put, all at the same time. So this is a three-part position. Long 100 shares, short a call, short a put. So as you can imagine, the covered straddle is when the investor is short a call and a put at the same strike. And that strike is typically pretty close to at the money. So both the call and the put have a strike price that's about the same as the stock price. A covered strangle is when they have 100 shares. They're short a call that's out of the money, so a higher strike than where the stock is trading. And they're short a put that's out of the money, so a lower strike than where the stock is trading. I would say that this is a pretty bad name. Like if I were king, I would not have called this covered straddle, covered strangle, because it's kind of not really covered. In a sense, you're adding risk, not covering risk, which is kind of to me what covered means in an option trading strategy. Now, that being said, it's always a little sticky when we're talking about, are you really adding risk? Does a cash secured put add risk? And in this case, I would say yes, it kind of does, because you're kind of willing to double up on your position if your put gets assigned. So in a sense, anyway, you kind of are adding risk. So if I were king, I would not have called this a covered straddle or a covered strangle. I'd have called it something clever, like the passerelli or something like that. That's not really clever. That's just egotistical. I'd probably come up with something clever. I don't think I'd name an option strategy after myself. That's just kind of weird. But for me, I typically trade, if I'm going to trade one of these, it's usually the covered strangle. To me, you get a lot more use out of the covered strangle than you get out of the covered straddle, but I have traded the covered straddle too. So let's drill down on the covered strangle. To me, a covered strangle can be kind of the perfect strategy for a long-term investor. And when I say long-term, when I trade these, it is fairly common for me to trade these with pretty long-term options. Not always, but a lot of times I trade them with pretty long-term options. And the way I look at it is, I've got 100 shares of the stock. I definitely like the stock here. If it goes lower to a certain point, I might want to buy some. That is one of the rationales for me doing a covered strangle. Buy some more if it goes lower and gets cheaper from a valuation standpoint. But if it goes higher, then it might get overly expensive and I'd be good to sell the 100 shares that I have. It's perfect in that regard for value investors. I buy more if the stock is lower. I sell it if the stock is higher. Now, those aren't the only reasons why I do it. One of the reasons why I do it, in fact, the one that I did today, is I've got on a long-term covered call. I actually put it on a few months ago. It's a leaps, so expiring in January, and I'm recording this here at the beginning of August. Doesn't matter what year. I've had this long-term covered call on for a while, and it's still valid. There's still enough juice in the call portion of it that I'm leaving the call portion of it on. And I actually had a put on, and it was 1 to 1 to 1. Even though it was a small position, I don't know if this is always the case, but when I think about it, a lot of the ones that I put on are lower dollar value trades. I'm sure it works just as well with higher dollar value trades, but I don't know. I've been doing on lower dollar value trades. I did have a put on that had a shorter amount of time to expiration. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But it didn't actually expire. I actually bought it back for a couple of pennies, took a profit on it. And so today I didn't so much replace them. I actually sold a bigger position in the puts. So now it's ratioed. It's like 1 to 1, like the covered call is 1 to 1 to 20 on the puts. And it's because I'm looking at the puts a little bit differently. I'm looking at the puts from a standpoint of what is my annualized rate of return on these puts, not to mention this particular stock is a takeover candidate. And there's a ton of support below it. The stock has never been below the put strike, at least in the last 10 years. So there's just a ton going for it. So I do like it on this ratio. I like the small position in the covered calls, but I love just the prospect of putting a much bigger chunk of cash in there and thinking about it as an interest-bearing investment from an annualized return standpoint. So kind of thinking about it like a bond with the benefit that it's a takeover candidate, with the benefit that there's support below, or no, there's support above where the break even is on this. So in this regard, I'm almost looking at it as two different trades, but there's a lot of commonality. It's the same underlying. So there's a lot you can do with these. You can get really, really creative with them. The benefit is you get to double dip. And what I mean by double dip is that you're selling an out of the money call. So you're getting that premium. And we've talked a lot about that. You get that. And you're selling an out of the money cash secured put. So you're getting that premium. You're getting two premiums. Only one of those options can come into play. It can either go above the call strike, which means the put strike is you're just going to skate on it. Or it can go below the put strike, which means the call strike you're just going to skate on. And because it's a strangle, you could end up between the two strike prices. And that's not really that uncommon, even for the longer term ones. A lot of the stocks that I do these on, they're pretty darn sideways, kind of boring old stocks. You know, they're in a range, and it could be a bigger range, but if I'm doing this with leaps going out 6 or 12 or 18 months in the future, it can bounce around in a big range for a year, and that's fine. It still works, and you might be able to skate on both of them. Now, if you skate on both of them, it is a pure double dip. But you only discover that in hindsight. You don't know if that's going to happen, but if it does happen, then okay, great, I double dipped. You can't count on it. But even if the call's in the money and gets assigned, the benefit of the covered call is you get assigned at the strike, but you get the call premium. So you get assigned at the strike plus the call premium. But in this case, you get assigned at the strike plus the call premium plus the put premium. So that indifference point with covered calls that we've talked about on previous episodes, that gets even higher. Your effective sales price of the stock, if you get assigned on the call, gets even higher. And then to the downside on the put, it's the same thing. If you get assigned, well, you get assigned at the strike price minus the put premium. That's your break even. But here, you're getting assigned on the extra shares, right? Because you already own 100 shares. You're getting assigned at the strike price minus the put premium minus the call premium. So it's bringing that effective break even price down even lower. So, I mean, you kind of still double dip even if you get assigned. I mean, even if it goes pretty far against you and you're getting assigned at like a price above where the stock ends up trading at the time, you still got the benefit of two premiums. So it's better than a regular cash secured put. It's better than a regular covered call. And that trade off means that you've got to sell the stock if it goes up a lot. So double premiums, but double potential for assignment. But you're only really going to think about executing this strategy if that's what you want. You want to get assigned if it goes down. You want to get assigned if it goes up. So let's look at an example. This was a stock. I'm taking some of this out of the draft of my book here. This is a stock. I think it was American Eagle Outfitters, AEO. I copied down some of this stuff for my notes. Yeah, it is AEO. So this was a little bit ago. The stock was at $10.96. And now, by the way, we go back and think about some of the rules basically that I gave for covered calls and cash secured puts. And one of them is we're not doing it on $10.96 stocks. But these, I don't know, they kind of work pretty well on these. They've got to be liquid. The option's got to be liquid. If the bid-ask spreads are too wide, this is a crappy strategy. But if the bid-ask spreads are tight, it can be a really nice one. So anyway, the stock was at $10.96. Sold the 11 strike leaps calls. So January, so many months, more than 6 months. So the 11 strike calls at $1.80. Now these calls in this case are just like, they're basically at the money. I was going to say they're a little out of the money. It's 4 cents. I mean, they're basically at the money. But I mean, I'm selling them for like 18% of the, well, what is it? 16% of the stock price, something like that. So, okay, I'll make 16% in less than a year. So it's more for an annualized return. So stock is at 1096. Sell the leaps 11 strike calls at $1.80 and sell the leaps 9 strike puts at $1. And you look at that and you think, man, I'm selling the at the money calls for $1.80 and then the 9 strike puts for just $1. I mean, that's more than half the price. And it's like, I don't know, 18% or something out of the money. Holy cow. That's one of the benefits of doing this on lower dollar value stocks. Again, this is a very, very niche strategy. It's because since that strike is so far out of the money, remember, with a typical stock, the lower the strike, the higher the implied volatility. So you get a lot of little nuanced benefits here. How do we think about this thing? Well, we want to start by plotting out the profit or loss at the strike prices. And look, this is how you do this with any option strategy. If you're drawing out a profit and loss diagram, and those of you who are paid subscribers, we've done this in some video extras. Go back and review the video extras. And again, like, look, I'm not giving you some sort of hard sales pitch or anything, but if you're not a subscriber already, you should try out the subscription. You really should, so that you can see how some of the stuff is done. It's an audio only podcast. And so that's really the only way I can do it is by giving you some video extra ones to show you how to do this. So you draw out your axes on the P&L diagram. And then what you do is you say, there's 2 strike prices, 11 and 9. If the stock's at 11 at expiration, what do I make or lose? If the stock's at 9 at expiration, what do I make or lose? So at the 11 strike, the calls strike, the stock will have made 4 cents from rising from $10.96 to $11. It's 4 cents profit. And the investor has a total of $2.80 option premium, right? $1.80 on the call and $1 on the put. That's a total of $2.80. So at 10, the profit is that 4 cents that the investor makes on the stock rising up 4 cents, plus the $2.80 total premium collected. So that's $2.84. Which is pretty darn good on a not quite even $11 stock. I mean, that's awesome. Notably, above that strike price, the put, of course, expires, and the stock, of course, is called away because of the call getting assigned. And if the stock is below the 11 strike, but above the put strike, the 9 strike, at expiration, the investor still owns the stock and both options expire. You totally double dip with no assignment at all. So that's what we think about as far as the 11 strike is concerned. Now, there's 2 strikes here. Let's look at the other one. At the 9 strike, the put strike, the stock will have lost $1.96, falling from where it was when we started, $10.96 to 9, right? 10.96 minus 9, you lose $1.96. But the investor has $2.80 in option premium from the $1.80 call and the $1 put. So at the 9 strike price at expiration, there would be a profit of 84 cents. That is, I lost $1.96, so negative 196, plus I have $2.80. 280 minus 196 is 84 cents profit. So if you can just visualize this in your mind's eye, you're just connecting those 2 dots. 84-cent profit here, $2.84 profit at the 11 strike. And then above 11, you get sort of a flat parallel line because the stock is called away and you have no position. And below the 9 strike, well, we'll get to that in a second. So above this $9 put strike, you would have 100 shares because both options expire. Below the 9 strike, you'd have 200 shares. The original 100 plus the 100 acquired resulting from the assignment of the put. The maximum profit is set at $2.84. Again, not bad. On a $10.96 stock, that's actually, you do the math on there, that's 25.9% return before annualizing. So if this is like a 9-month option, I mean, it's more than that, significantly more than that. With the stock above the call strike at expiration, because the put expires, that indifference point that we talked about, which is just simply the strike price plus the call premium with a covered call. But in this case, it's the call strike price plus the total premium received. Call premium of $1.80 plus the put premium of $1. So that's 11. Well, it's $1.80 plus $1. That's $13.80. So, I mean, now we're kind of talking here, right? The indifference point is the point at which an investor is indifferent to whether he or she did the covered strangle in the first place. If it's below there, the investor's glad they did it. If the stock is above the indifference point, the investor feels like they left money on the table. So that's 1380, 11 plus 280. I mean, that's $2.84 higher than where the stock is. I mean, that's freaking great, right? I mean, it depends. If this is a stock where you think is just going to explode, you know, it's one that zips all over, you think in a year it could be trading at 100, then you'd never want to do this. But if it's a boring stock that's bouncing around in a range and you don't think it's going to take off like mad, then you love this. And then the break even on this one, this really is a trickier one. And by break even, I mean to the downside, like where you would show a loss if it goes down too much. It is a little bit trickier. At the 9 strike, the trade was up 84 cents. Remember that? We talked about that. You'd lose $1.96 on the stock, but you keep $2.80, 280 minus $1.96. If the stock is at 9 at expiration, you're up 84 cents. Now, below that 9 strike, you'd have 200 shares. That means each penny the stock ticks down below that 9 strike, that 200 share position loses 2 pennies. So that means if the stock goes down 42 cents lower, that 84-cent profit would be lost, right? 84 divided by 2 is 42. If it goes down 42 cents lower, if the stock goes down 42 cents lower, it's 200 shares, so you'd lose 84 cents, which is your profit. So that would be your break even. It would be $9 strike price minus 42 cents, or 84 divided by 200 shares, right? So $8.58 is your break even. So the range here where you're feeling like you're trading like a champ is on this $10.96 stock is anywhere above 858 and below, what I say, 1380, which is more than a $5 range on a not quite $11 stock. So it can stay in almost a 50% range. It's like 40 some percent, 45, 46, 47% range it can stay in. There are situations that you will come across where this is a fantastic way to trade the scenario. It's not an everyday scenario. It's not an every week scenario. It's probably not even an every month scenario. But for the right set of circumstances, gosh, man, this can be really, really amazing. So let's talk about the expectations for the covered strangle. I mean, if you like the break even of just the covered call, which would be 916, right? That would be 1096 minus 180. If you like the break even at 916, you love the break even at 858. But the question is, do you love it enough to double down on the stock, to get an extra 100 shares per put if the stock is below the strike price at expiration? And for those times when the answer is yes, you love this trade. You love it. And I'm using the at expiration narrative here because this is usually the sort of trade that you need to hold for a long time. This is not like a one-day trade. You usually have to hold this until pretty close to expiration for it to be effective. These are income trades. These are theta trades. That's how the trade works. In the interim, either the call or put is always going to show a loss at some point. In fact, it's not unlikely that one of them, the call or the put, might be a loser for like half the life of the trade. And that's okay. Because this is as close to a set it and forget it type of investing trade that there is. The best practice here is to basically ignore it for a long, long time unless the fundamentals of the stock change in such a way that the original thesis of the trade is just no longer valid. Treat it like a Thanksgiving turkey. You throw it in the oven, and once an hour, you baste it. I mean, you don't want to look at the trade once an hour. You want, it's like the Thanksgiving turkey is not just an analogy, but it's a microcosm, right? I mean, if you're cooking the turkey for 6 hours and you check it once an hour, that's, once every 6 hours, what did that come out to? 16% of the time. So, like, yeah, once a month, you're going to check on this trade. Hey, how's that trade doing? Now, I mean, honestly, to be sure, me, just about every day, I go through all the investments that I have in my IRA and I say, okay, how is each one of them doing? But the ones like this, and what do I have in here? I think I've just got one on right now in my IRA, one of these covered strangles, right? Yeah. No, I have two actually. And one's a shorter term one. But the longer term covered strangle that I have on, the one I was talking about earlier, I do look at it every day, but I won't allow myself to think about it. I won't allow myself to care. Like the one, I just sold some of those puts, again, like a greater ratio of puts today. And oh, okay, they're a smidge against me. I don't care. Don't care. Talk to me in not even just a month. They don't expire for, let's see, March. So that's what this is, the eighth month, 10 months. They don't expire for 10 months. I don't care if they're against me a little or even a medium amount or even a lot. I don't care. Talk to me if it's a 10-month trade, talk to me in 5 months. I might think about starting to care then. So, I mean, it's kind of sort of set it and forget it. Thanksgiving turkey. Yeah, the little button didn't pop up yet. It's not done. Let it cook. Low and slow, baby. There are also lots of offshoot ways to trade these strategies. And one of the notable ones that can be pretty useful also is the split time covered strangle. And that's what I was talking about. Remember I said, oh yeah, I've got this covered call on. The call expires in January, or actually it expires in December. But I just put on some puts to complete the covered strangle, but they expire now in March. It's split time or split expiration, two different expirations. And when I do these, I'm usually legging, and that's why they're split time. When I originally put this trade on, I know I didn't say what the symbol is because it doesn't matter. When I originally put this trade on, it was just a covered call. And then the stock went down. It went down not a lot, but I was down on the trade because I was losing 100 delta on the stock and less than 100 delta I was making on the call, so losing if it goes down. And so I just liked the support that was there, and so I sold a put. And since then it expired, and so I sold more puts now. Just keep bringing in that premium, squeezing out the juice. That's how it works. But I legged into them by trading the options at two different times. And that's why they ended up being two different expirations. I made the best choice I could for the covered call trade when I put it on. And then I made the best choice that I could for the put trade that was on. Not that I'm really was thinking about them as two separate trades. I was still thinking of them as a covered strangle, just a split time strangle. But still, it is its own unique individual leg. And I made the best decision for it at the time. So it doesn't have to be the same expiration. It doesn't have to be because it doesn't matter. Let's talk a little bit about the management of these. So besides just sitting there and basically doing nothing, checking on it, basting it every once in a while, every 10 or 15 or 20% of the amount of time there is until expiration, that's your number one management technique. That's your number one management technique. But the one thing that I do with almost every covered call or cash secured put, including if they're part of a covered strangle, is as soon as I put that trade on and get filled on it, You know what the next thing I do is, don't you? Our long term listeners or our long term market taker mentoring students, you know what the first thing I do is, don't you? That's right. I put in my closing order. So, okay, these puts I sold this morning, sold them at $1.75. They don't expire for a while. And so, yeah, I I sold a fair amount of them to have a meaty enough trade. Soon as I got filled, I turned around and put in an order to buy them back at 3 cents GTC. Good till canceled. And if the stock takes off to the upside, I might get filled on those in a month. If it doesn't, I might get filled on those the week of expiration. And it doesn't matter. I just put that trade in, that good till cancel order in anyway, because if it gets filled, it's a gift. If it doesn't, it didn't cost me anything. So that's really kind of the only other management thing that I do as a norm. Number one, just sit there and wait and let the magic happen, which then the magic in this case is called theta. Let the magic happen, but put in a good till cancel order just in case there's a delta move where you can close it out and take all your profits on that leg early. But then the only other thing is you keep tabs on it every now and then. Look at the news on it, look at the chart of it. Anything really fundamentally change? Probably not, but maybe. If it did, then you make a decision to fix it and make it better. If nothing happened, then stick with your original plan. You got your GTC on, base of turkey, walk away. And when I say fundamentally change, I'm not saying like you're in an overzealous mood and so you want to make some sort of change just because you like trading. Like, no. Fundamental change means like there's actually something very different that happened. There's new news announced that there's a company that's buying them. Or there's new news announced that the CFO was cooking the books and going to jail and the stock is, trading 50% lower. Like a significant thing is what I'm talking about. If there's not a significant thing, don't do anything. Just walk away. And then finally, the covered straddle. Since we're using the same strike, if you think about it, one of the options is always going to be in the money. Because if it's the same strike, like maybe the strike is 100. Well, the stock is always going to be above or below 100. I mean, technically it could be right at 100, but it's not going to sit there for a month or 2 months right at the strike price. It's not going to happen. So one of the options is always going to be in the money, and the other one's always going to be out of the money. And this is situation dependent. You can make a case for either of them, and whatever the situation calls for is what you should do. I mean, if you're really dying to buy some more shares, then you might sell the option that's slightly in the money, and then the call with the same strike would be out of the money. Give it room to run to the upside and not taking room to run to the downside. Your benefit to the downside is the double premium. And if volatility is high, great. Or if it's just a really long time till expiration, then there's just a lot of meat to the premium anyway. Great. So yeah, the covered strangles, they're more aggressive in that way. When I say in that way, I mean in the sense that you literally want to get assigned and you actually don't care whether you get assigned on the call or the put. So in a way, I would say that the covered straddle really relies more on, I just want this option premium. And if I get assigned on the put and get another 100 shares, I'm just going to sell 2 calls next time. Wrap it back into the wheel strategy. If I get assigned on the call and my stock gets called away, I'll just sell another put. So yeah, the covered strangle, definitely a little bit more aggressive, more reliant on the option premium. That's like really the big part of the trade. And, just reminder, the at the money option, and even though I was saying one option's in the money, one option's out of the money, you're doing the closest to the money strike typically with these. So you're selling the quote unquote at the money. And that has the highest time premium. Only time premium decays. Only time premium benefits you in covered calls to cash secured puts. So kind of a different nuance, but hey, man, that's okay. And that about wraps it up for this show. But before you go, I don't want you to miss a single episode. If you're like me, you binge podcasts. I do that. I just love starting at the beginning and going and going and going until the darn thing ends. So please make sure that you are subscribed on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever it is. And if you would be so kind as to leave a comment, oh man, I would surely appreciate it. Because the more comments that are left, the higher that podcast service ranks our podcast. And together, we can grow the wealth building community that we all benefit from if you just leave a comment. That's all you have to do. Until next time, friends, invest excellently.
Options involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. Before buying or selling an option, read characteristics and risks of standardized options. A link is provided in the show notes. To learn more about your host, Dan Passarelli, please visit markettaker.com.